Chapter 1. Listening to Inaudible Music. A Prelude. In this restless world, the demands made by the feverish tempo of present-day life and the constant straining of the resources of mankind, both mental and physical, create more problems than solve the old ones. True, we live longer, but our faster pace of living presents us with more and more crises that leave little time for quietude and listening. Indeed, relaxation is so unusual that the very word relax has become a kind of half-humorous catchword. Too often, it is induced by drugs and tranquilizers, with the disastrous result that the main object of life is missed because of dulled perception. In addition, we allow the true purpose of life to be buried under an avalanche of urgent but disconcerting material considerations. This intense involvement with material things leaves us without the consolation of peace, contemplation, or the pursuit of higher aspirations. Indeed, the very words higher aspirations would appear to indicate only bigger doses of the same thing, that is, higher standards of living or material comfort, and peace seems to be only a state of cold war, or perhaps a brief breathing space between crises. But the pendulum swings, and many people, acutely aware of a spiritual vacuum, are recoiling from the great callousness of human behavior that is so astonishingly exhibited even in this 20th century. The vociferous so-called demands for freedom more often than not end in unbridled license and in sheer caricature of a great ideal. Overflowing hospitals, clinics, prisons, and reformatories belie most of our claims of progress. We can scarcely congratulate ourselves upon this unhappy state of affairs. On the contrary, it calls even more loudly than before for a deep reassessment of the human situation and all its accepted values. It is fairly obvious that we must be overlooking a vital factor. To find what it is, we must start from the beginning, and this is self-discovery. We are passing into a new phase of unfoldment. Therefore, the essentially valid question may be, indeed must be asked once more, what is the purpose of life, and what kind of a practical man fulfills that purpose? Is he essentially a materialist, or is he perhaps something of a mystic? It is a searching, challenging question, but a very great authority, Maharaj Charan Singh, a present-day saint of whom we shall speak later, gives us some valuable guidance. Footnote: Maharaj Charan Singh Ji passed away on June 1st, 1990. 2 days before departing, he appointed Baba Gurinder Singh Ji as his successor. End footnote. He says of the materialist versus the mystic that the one is fascinated by the structure of created things, the other seeks knowledge of the Creator himself. A beautiful evaluation, but he does not leave us there. He freely gives us his whole teaching. The philosophy of Sant Mat, teachings of the saints, which is completely relevant to our problems. It is essentially a discipline for the practical mystic. An out-and-out materialist, or even an intellectual who thinks of himself as a practical man, often finds it difficult to be patient with the idealist or dreamer of dreams. He forgets that truth is perhaps the other way around from what he perceives, that the things he handles at the material, three-dimensional level are but the outcome of the so-called dreamer's work. Indeed, it could be reasonably insisted that these evanescent material things and passing events are shaped and projected from a different level, one that is much higher than the phenomenal plane of the familiar, but unreliable five senses. Great authorities of many religions proclaim again and again that this is so. The Christian New Testament says that through the Word, all things were made. The Adi Granth says, the creation came out of Nam. The Hindu Vedas say that out of the breath of Brahm was everything made that was made. These scriptures clearly indicate that there is much more than just plain materialized, created existence. Since you cannot get something out of nothing, it follows that there is another realm from which this physical three-dimensional world was projected. It behooves us, therefore, as practical men and women, to find out exactly what is meant by those mysterious phrases, the word, Nam, and the breath of Brahm, for they are obviously three synonymous terms for a crucial matter from three different recognized authorities, and there are many more like them from other sources. But personal investigation of the word, the source of creation, the fountain of man's activities and aspirations, other than along material lines, is often thought to be dull and inconclusive. To be sure, it is interesting enough to speculate on these things, or to hear them discussed in lectures on philosophy, theology, and such. But if the search is adopted as a way of life, that is a different matter. It is then often seen as some sort of escapism or physiological upset, or something that interferes with the business and the reality of life. This is unfortunate, because this investigation is by far the most important reality of life. And like any other study, it requires special technique, special terminology, and special thought. It is tremendously absorbing work and infinitely rewarding. Its true significance, however, depends very much upon how it presents itself to one's mind, upon how deeply one enters, quite literally, into the spirit of it, and of course, upon what one finds is the business of life. To make this search, we are singularly ill-prepared, in spite of the existence of so many established religions and philosophies. If religion consists mostly of the observance of moral precepts, rituals, and rules of thumb, however strictly obeyed, it gets nowhere. If philosophy consists of book studies, lectures, and pious platitudes, it is indeed sterile. From childhood onwards, we are taught many things that sound most improbable and are hard to believe, but we accept them for the moment in good faith, even if with reservation and puzzlement. When we have grown enough to test these teachings, we often let them pass unchallenged as gospel truth, and they are automatically adopted as facts, rituals, and conventions. But there comes a time when these ritualistic observances must be substantiated. Good faith must be implemented by mystic inner experiences of a personal and transcendental nature, or the truth of our beliefs must forever remain illusory. But how is it possible to gain the mystic experiences that are, in essence, the sole reason for religions of all kinds? The Bible tells us that we are the highest form of creation, but it also says that we have eyes but do not see, and ears but do not hear. By good fortune, this situation can be rectified through the catalytic philosophy of Sant Mat. This philosophy gives a new and revivifying perspective to all religions and schools of philosophic thought. It offers direct experience of realms beyond the ordinary material plane, and it instructs one in how to achieve this experience. This can be accomplished by listening to what we do not hear, a special inner music that has a very special purpose. Sant Mat teaches one to listen to this inaudible music by a special practice called the Yoga of the Creative Sound Current, or Divine Melody, or in Hindi, Surat Shabad Yoga. This practice establishes a real platform for freedom and happiness of the highest order. A great teacher of Sant Mat, Maharaj Charan Singh ji, of whom we shall also speak later, said in his discourses on Sant Mat, Feeling instinctively that the earth is not his home, man has been investigating restlessly to try to make a true appraisal of his predicament in this isthmus of a middle state, and to discover his real home. Two principal methods have been adopted by him for this purpose, one of science and the other of religion. Scientists, seeking for truth outside the body, have delved into the earth, flown in the sky, crossed the mountains, reached the poles, and formed some idea, even though their conceptions go on changing from age to age, of the nature and formation of the earth. They have not, however, discovered the ultimate truth by their investigations, and have no inkling at all of our true home. As a matter of fact, even modern philosophy, borrowing indiscriminately from modern science, has moved further from the truth by emphasizing the material aspect of the mind and the mechanical nature of the body. But the second group of investigators, whom we call saints, perfect masters, mystics, and prophets, had found a complete answer to man's query about his real home. Working with much finer instruments and on higher planes, they have made remarkable discoveries which the world is as yet far from appreciating fully. A most wonderful fact is that their researches, conducted within the human body, which is itself a natural laboratory, have yielded similar results in all ages, climes, and countries. They have rent the veils of illusion and have discovered truths that are eternal and immutable. In their books, which we call scriptures, they have left details of the inner spiritual journey. Now let us find out what they have to say about our true home and the path that leads to it. The analysis of the self, as given by the saints, reveals that there are three separate entities in man: the physical body, the mind, and the spirit. The essence, or real man, is the soul, or spirit, while the mind and body are accretions that the soul has acquired during the course of its endless wanderings. This earth is the home of the physical body alone. We have two other bodies, the astral and the causal, but these belong to higher realms. The home of the mind is in Trikuti, the second heaven, whereas the home of the soul is in the highest of heavens, called by Swamiji as Radha Swami Dham, meaning abode of the Lord of the soul. The University of Spirit has its own teachers whom we call masters, and requires the same constant application as is needed for winning academic honors. The way of attaining mystic experiences is summarized by the present spiritual master of Sant Mat, Maharaj Charan Singh. Footnote: Maharaj Charan Singh Ji was the master when this book was written. End footnote. It strikes a strange and unfamiliar note to the Western ear, for he says, "First comes the grace of God, then the company of saints, and then the acquisition of the secret of Nam. Then, by constant application and unceasing devotion, comes the actual realization of Nam. That is the order. Once started on the path," he says, "we go on at our own pace, according to our zeal and fervor for God realization, and the debts of karma which we still have to discharge." For a person who seriously wishes to reassess the human situation, this statement holds the key that opens the door of all deeper aspiration. For the actual realization by personal experience of the creative sound, or word or nam, is the mainspring, the common denominator of all true spiritual experience. And there is no simpler nor more direct approach to the experience than through Sant Mat philosophy. It is the basic truth of all religious doctrines in their highest aspect. The constant application and unceasing devotion needed to realize the word refers to the exercise of meditation and contemplation. Meditation is to still the mind by repetition, and when that is accomplished, to listen to that ensuing word or creative sound current that is mentioned in practically all the scriptures of the world as the most vital factor. Contemplation is to observe and experience that which is revealed when the mind is stilled. Instruction on attaining access to the sound current in meditation is given by the living master. The whole of Sant Mat practice, as taught by the masters, is designed to lift the attention of the mind far above the level at which dogmas have any significance, to where the theological barriers cease to exist. But the acceptance of this fact is essentially a personal act. In Sarbachan, an earlier master of Sant Mat, Swamiji of Agra, very wisely says, "People become offended when advice is offered. One should therefore be careful before beginning conversation, and should not be persistent if anyone does not accept his views, nor should any attempt be made to convince the other person." However, we are not offended by advice that is offered with poetic beauty, as in The Higher Pantheism by Alfred Lord Tennyson. "Speak to him thou, for he hears, and spirit with spirit can meet. Closer is he than breathing, and nearer than hands and feet. And the ear of man cannot hear, and the eye of man cannot see. But if we could see and hear this vision, were it not he?" Sant Mat delves deeply into the actual science of hearing and seeing. Indeed, it is devoted to that end. In Discourses on Sant Mat, Volume 1, Maharaj Charan Singh says, "This word is not, as is usually believed, a written word. Actually, it is a power that emanates continuously from the Supreme Being, the power that created and now sustains the vast universe of universes. The saints and perfect masters teach their disciples how to contact this power, which is everywhere present, and is heard by initiates as the most enchanting and enrapturing harmony or melody. This music is not only beautiful, it is also purifying and uplifting. It purifies the human mind and then draws the soul upwards with an irresistible power, the power of love of the Supreme God Himself." This, then, is the way in which the endless round of incarnation is broken. Karma is finished, laid aside, and reunion is eventually made with the Beloved, our Father, the Absolute.